Okay, folks, we're going to come back to our meeting. Okay. I think we're all ready to go. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We'll probably go through a little bit of ex parte, but through many different issues and things that this city and many cities have to go through. That podium and microphone is the place where we so many of us get the opportunity to speak our opinion and our positions, and I hope that that's a great format for everybody, and that we continue to do that respectfully. And even though there's differing opinions on that, we can say what we need to say and move forward. So I just want to clarify that. As far as ex parte, I just want to cover a couple of things on that and thank. There's many people that I've spoken to this. I want to start. I want to thank Fred Collins and PJ Webb for having conversations through this. Jeremiah O'Brien and Mark Tognazzini, folks at the San Luis Harbor, Monterey Harbor, our own harbor, Eric Entersby, thanks. And Glenn Bledovich from NOAA. That was a visit through our CMB visit. Senator McGuire's staff office today, as well as Senator Monning's office. The many emails. Jim Hausner, I just want to recognize Jim. He's our the gentleman in the red shirt back there that spoke in public comment. Thanks for taking the trip today. This was, for those of you who don't know, he's our executive director for the CMB organization, and every trip that Morro Bay goes back to Washington D.C., Jim Hausner is the lead on that and running everybody through the agenda. So for that has to do with our harbor dredging funds and those issues. So I want to just recognize you for that. Those are my ex partes for that, and I'll turn to my right for any other ex partes from the rest of council.
For my ex parte, I spoke to folks at San Luis Harbor, Monterey Harbor. If you need me to name everybody, several representatives of the fishing industry, Mr. Haas, representative for Ms. Camps, a number of local people that contacted me, and myself as well contacted them, and then staff. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Aside from all the communications we received that have been entered into the record, I had a conversation with Jeremiah O'Brien from the Morro Bay Commercial Fishing Organization, with Andrew Christie from the Sierra Club, with Fred Collins from the Northern Chumash Tribal Council, with Kelsey from the Chumash Tribe, with Bill LaFay from the Harbor Advisory Board, as well as separately Neil Maloney from the Morro Bay Oyster Company and the Harbor Advisory Board, Bill Joros, the regional West Coast director for NOAA on the sanctuaries, and also Dave Kirk from the Port San Luis Harbor Commission.
Okay, some of these are a little bit more 2 or 3 months ago when this emerged in the news. So that's when I spoke to Mark Tognazzini and Jeremiah O'Brien, representing Morro Bay fishing interests here. Bill Doros from NOAA spoke to him today, Andrew Christie today, and Dave Kirk from our pier down at Port St. Louis.
Thanks. And I failed to mention our Harbor Advisory Board Chair, Bill LaFay, as well. So definitely reached out to him and spoke with him.
As did I.
Yeah, great. So as we get into discussion and deliberations, is there any other questions that we might want to start off with first? You want to get into deliberations? Is there any follow-up questions? Seeing none, we can get in discussion on this. Noah, did you want to lead off, or do you feel either way?
So I think we were able to air out a lot of concerns from what is clearly a historical conversation that the community's had for almost 25 years now. I've only been involved for a portion of that. At one point as a volunteer with the Surfrider Foundation, and then as a council member And during that time, in 2002, we did have a resolution presented to the council regarding our support or opposition to a proposal to expand the Monterey Sanctuary. And I supported that. That was a unanimous vote by the council at that time. And I do have very strong concerns about the potential impacts to our local fishery and marine environments. And at the same time, I supported the resolution mostly because I felt like we needed a deeper conversation with the community, with NOAA, to address some of the concerns that have been mentioned tonight. And I think that still exist. Since then, I've spent some more time learning about the sanctuary designation process and also learning about the existing regulations of the fishing industry and what it means to our community. And I still find that we need to continue the conversation, and I think we're ready to. This proposal is much different than the expansion of Monterey Bay Sanctuary, and I think that's a good thing. The designation process, to me, is something that we need to be at the table for, regardless of how our stance is locally. And obviously, we have a split community to a certain degree. I think we have some work to do before we can make a decision on what our official stance is. I think it's pretty clear what our concerns are and that we need dialogue. But in my conversation with Mr. Doros today, I think that there is a need for some specific information and public forum opportunities to evaluate and learn more of what a sanctuary could do, what it won't do, and how it could work for us, how it could threaten our heritage industries and so forth. And one of the thoughts that I have is, regardless of what the city makes comments on with this sanctuary designation, we should reach out to NOAA, and I believe they would respond with coming here to Morro Bay and actually hosting a forum to help address some of the concerns, whether they're misconceptions or whether they're true, and learn more and work through this challenge. A couple of things that have stood out to me over time is historically seeing the moments where our community has come together, and those have been over serious threats to our ecosystem and fisheries. That includes the ag-polluted water from the valley, the selenium dump off Point Estero, the seismic testing, and some potential for oil and gas development, I think, has brought people together. And my concern is trying to balance the larger threats that I think clearly exist and probably will only grow over time, with the need to ensure that a local industry like fishing is allowed to continue to grow and demonstrate that it can be sustainable, which I think it is currently doing. That we can continue to maintain an important harbor for the West Coast and for our local community and tourists and visitors, that it can be continued to be supported, and that we are engaged in the process. So I'm not sure we're ready to make a decision tonight. I think if we did, it would it wouldn't be clear enough, and I don't think I could vote for the resolution as it currently stands tonight with what I've learned since then. A couple of key things that stand out to me. I did ask the question about what currently, 2014, the city of Monterey has offloaded in fish in 2014. Same with Moss Landing, and then of course we have the excellent report from our Morro Bay Commercial Fishing Association about the 2014 economic impacts, and it's actually very impressive what's occurred in the fishery up in Monterey. 65 million pounds offloaded in Monterey alone, worth approximately $20 million. Moss Landing, 60 million pounds. They didn't list a valuation of that, but I expect it's somewhere in that 20 million. For Morro Bay, we offloaded approximately 6.7 million pounds, and the value was somewhere between 7 and 8 million, according to our report. And I look at that because I heard, and I continue to hear a lot of concern about what the Monterey Sanctuary has done to the fishery, or is starting to do, the bait and switch concern. And I'm sure that we would need to be vigilant to protect against that, but then I also have seen examples and talked directly with some fishermen in the Farallones Institute Sanctuary, as well as out of the Channel Islands Sanctuary, and I see successes and a value in having some organization that becomes the umbrella for conversations and to help us coordinate these conversations. The MIG effort, the Marine Interest Group that was launched here, I think was probably healthy in its discussions, but it really, the end result was really no action. And I think we need to pick up on that. And I see the designation process as an opportunity to have a conversation, and we can formulate our opinion and position based on that, and fight hard to have our local stakeholders in the room and part of the structuring of that. So that's where I'm at, and I do think 10, 15 years down the road, we would most likely be very appreciative of some additional regulation and protections against some of the big industry, the big fish that could come in and really quickly brush aside any local protections against oil and gas exploration in particular. So those are my comments for now.
John?
Thank you, Noah, N-O-A-H, not N-O-A-A. I have to be specific each time I say that now. Thank you. Thank you all, first of all, for coming out tonight. And not only you that are here that spoke, those of you that didn't speak, and I looked at your faces, kind of figured out what you were thinking. And also those of you that sent emails, letters, etc., especially the emails, if I didn't get a chance to respond, which I try to everybody. I did read it, or I do have a copy of it and read it before we got here tonight. So thank you for that. And for me, I'm landing in a place where I agree with NOAH, and that is I don't feel that for myself this has been significantly vetted to the point where I have what I would consider to be the gospel truth. And not that anybody came up and purposefully lied, but even in speaking with a number of people, for myself, there's still a need to vet this a bit and get further or closer to the truth. Someone once told me that the truth lies somewhere between what is said and what's heard, and so there be it. And I'm very much into locally controlling as much of our destiny as possible. And I shouldn't say this loudly, but I have significant distrust for government-generated federal regulations, because I work in an industry that is the most regulated industry in the United States. And so it, for me, is often a moving target, so to speak. And so the trust of what I buy into now may not be exactly what's going to be in the future, if that makes sense to you. So I worry about that. But economically, too, I do hear the issue about oil spills and building rigs out there and so forth and so on. I get that. But I also see the economic need that this community has to, again, use, as I said earlier, a switch station that we have that has a linkage and could be beneficially used and economically could contribute greatly to the economic outlook for the community in the future. And that is just the brief comment that I made that had to do with Trident and the possibility not of wave energy, but actually wind generated energy, and to lock ourselves out of that is something that is very concerning to me, potentially, if indeed that this initiative or this sanctuary did do. And so I, like you, Noah, feel that there needs to be further discussion. I would like to get further input. I'm not quite sure what the best process or way to go about that is before I buy into fully signing off on the existing template that we have, or one that's close to the one that we did previously. And so for me, that's where I stand.
Thanks, John. Christine, would you like me to go, or would you like to go?
Oh, I'd much rather wait, actually.
Okay, great. I prepared a lot of comments, and it's interesting how public comment, staff report, and council comments have laid out, and interesting to consider having more information and more time to vet this out. I'm super supportive of protection and preserving our oceans. As someone who's been in the ocean for most of my life, like many folks, it's pretty important to me. But I'm not in support of the proposed Chumash Heritage Marine Sanctuary nomination. And I'm going to be a little bold here and step out and discuss a little bit of my comments on that. I'll preface my explanation with considering our nation, how we seem to be polarized to the left and polarized to the right, and that field in the middle is very, very narrow. And I think tonight, maybe some of that, there were some examples tonight. Mr. Christie talked about the feasibility report that was drafted, the financial economic report that was drafted for the Sierra Club. And then we also hear about an economic report for the commercial fishermen, as if one is a winner over the other. There's one loser and over the other, and that right and left focus. 3 years ago, I partnered with NOAA, N-A-O-H, excuse me, no, not N-O-A-A, and the Sierra Club, as a matter of fact. And this was a non-city sanctioned exploratory marine sanctuary expedition, and we went through some meetings. We had an outreach workshop with our commercial fishermen. We had fishermen come from Monterey, the Farallon, and it was at the community center. It was very, very informative to me. 3 years ago, just getting the sense of what a marine sanctuary was from that perspective, and I learned quite a bit through that process. And I also learned that the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary wasn't working very well. And that was one of the messages to me. The overall Sanctuary Act in of itself, I think most of us want to embrace. In fact, the fishermen in Monterey embraced it in the very beginning. But there was a loss in trust at some point when the management of that sanctuary changed. And I think that's the part that I don't struggle with, but I want to be able to see if we can correct. And part of my comment during that time was to Mr. Christie, it's very apparent that the sanctuary, the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary, has been dealt with some challenges and difficulties with the relationship between our commercial fishermen and the Sanctuary Act management of itself. My comment was, let's fix that first. Let's fix that. Let's work on fixing that and then gain the trust of our commercial fishermen and basically multiple users in that. Because the spirit of the Sanctuary Act, as I've learned, was the intent is and was for multiple users. And there's different parts that are missing, and I've got some things written down, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I think that's fundamentally why I oppose the nomination that we're discussing tonight. As we discuss the different areas in which I found to be the most important, I'll just read through these. I have a list of about 4 items here that were discussed, and I've learned through through some of the NOAA meetings, and this is NOAA, sorry, NOAA, through at Washington, D.C. So on an annual basis, I'm privileged enough to go to Washington, D.C. with Eric, our city manager, Jim Hausner, who leads that cement group, and we go there to meet different agencies to ensure that we maintain the dredging of our harbor. We also pay a visit to NOAA. We have discussions on our fisheries and our commercial fishing concerns and needs. And I think through that, I've probably had a little bit more exposure and experience than others on council, which leads me to just make a really quick comment for Mr. Kreutzer, because I felt guilty that you conveyed some comment that information wasn't brought back to you from that, and I think I've done a brief overview of that weekend, but or that week event there. But I feel as though, based on your comments, I need to do more work on that, and it probably includes some of the agenda that goes on with that. It's not a secret. The agenda it's right there on my paper. We all have the same agenda. What agencies we talk to, and what the discussions are. But the part that I think is, I'll just read through this. I think the suggestions in which I would want to move forward on would be to request that the Sanctuary Advisory Council charters and protocols be changed to allow the Sanctuary Advisory Council the freedom to set agendas, draft correspondence, include members of Congress, and have the SAC appointments made through a community process rather by the sanctuary superintendent. The other point I had was clarify that the Department of Fish and Game and the National Marine Fisheries Service are the agencies responsible for fishing regulation as per the original intent when the sanctuary was designated in the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Any zones or regulations proposed to any agency or group by the sanctuary which affect fishing would occur only if they are a result of the cooperative effort with those entities. And finally, the designation document. I think we've talked a lot about the designation document and the fact that the designation document can be changed. And the designation document amendment process must be revisited to ensure local input plays a key role in maintaining local needs and desires. In other words, if we move forward with this nomination and we go through the designation process, and I'm not 100% on all this, so I'm giving, I'll give you that ex parte there. But as we go through the designation process, as an example, Mr. Collins expressed, hey, there's going to be no fishing regulations allowed in this nomination. But as the designation document is developed, if there's opposing groups out there, that designation document gets formed through the public process. And if after it gets to a review process and it can be changed, my understanding is it can be changed at the administrative level without the type of public review that addresses our needs here. So when we make comments about we have local control, I think that's the missing key right there. We don't necessarily have local control when the designation document can be changed in Washington, D.C. Those are the concerns I think we all should have. We definitely want to be able to protect our waters and the sanctuary in of itself as it is adopted, if that be the case. But those are my 3 comments on that. And then my 4th one was based on some of the conversation tonight, but some of the history that I've learned of, and that's reestablish a marine interest group of regional significance. I think former Mayor Peters talked about the Marine Interest Group, and I think perhaps if these list of elements that I would suggest that we have amended in our Sanctuary Act, because I think fundamentally we all say, no, we can't change the Sanctuary Act. But fundamentally, things do need to change. And so my comment on the Marine Interest Group is that perhaps we can form another marine interest group of regional significance that includes Monterey, includes our local communities, and with that, these particular requests of a Sanctuary Advisory Council modification or ensuring the designation document amendment process is revisited, then you have a marine interest group of regional significance that is lobbying our legislators to make the change that needs to be changed. Those are my overall comments on this. I also looked on the Sierra Club website, and I think some of the comments there, or the blog there, and I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on this, but part of the blog was that we need to have this sanctuary to prevent oil drilling. And the example was Senate Bill 788 was proposed within the state, and it failed at the, let me look at that, appropriations floor. So SB 788 was a California legislation that would prohibit offshore oil drilling, and it failed this year. It's not done and it's not over, which is the reason I called the author's office today and spoke with their staff. That would be Senator McGuire. And that bill will be reauthored. And I think when we talk about protecting from offshore oil drilling, as we all know, it could take years before we get the sanctuary intact if it goes smoothly from today. SB 788 that was proposed, if it goes through next year and gets approved, we could have that prohibition of offshore oil drilling next year. And I think that's maybe one of the oversights that we need to be focusing on. As I was talking to the staff from Senator McGuire's office, he also informed me, the staffer informed me, that there could be a possibility of a platform off Vandenberg Air Force Base. That's not very far from our local commercial fishermen. And that's a concern. And I don't think the Sanctuary Act is going to get approved in time for that application. But if we really are serious about offshore oil drilling opposition in California, then I think we need more concentration on SB 788, which next year could be a different bill. But maybe this raises the awareness through our community and perhaps others that we need to take this more seriously. And those are all my comments. I'll turn it over to Christine.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to all of you who spoke out tonight, sent emails, added additional clarity for us, and thanks to my colleagues for speaking honestly and openly about where we are, and thanks to Eric Endersby for answering questions that were challenging to answer tonight. I appreciate that. I'm tending to, well, put it this way. I think that if either, if any of you are here hoping that I would be able to support the 2012 resolution just because it's what's always been done, I'm unable to do that tonight. If those of you are here tonight hoping that this council or that I would be able to say, let's find a way to word a resolution that supports fully the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, I'm unable to do that tonight. And I tried to set it up earlier in my questions that I simply don't have the information. And I'm not able to fulfill the desire of either side to say that I support or I oppose. It would be a disservice to make a decision my opinion tonight on whether or not I would vote to oppose or to support. And the reason being is this is the first time I've been on council and we have publicly had the discussion of this. So sometimes things come forward and sometimes they don't. So it is, of course, Mayor Irons, by tradition, that's been the position that goes back to D.C. and is more involved in other positions and more involved in some of those lobbying efforts to secure our dredging and promote our culture, our historic recreational boating, commercial fishing, and recreational fishing history here in Morro Bay. But I haven't had the opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. That just hasn't been what my task has been here. So I do need more information. And I haven't heard any more than 3 minutes from each of the individuals whose organizations brought this forward. I didn't hear more than 3 minutes from some of your commercial fishing groups. I have spoken in casual conversations with folks, but we haven't been able to bring this, in my opinion, to the community for a different kind of conversation. And even for Mayor Irons, what you're proposing we do tonight, I don't know how would we even begin to craft a response within the timeline that's running now in the NOAA process for us to, tonight at 10:20, be able to craft something that is solid for this community moving forward. I'd like to have many items, again, presented to the community. I'd like to have everybody take a look at Appendix A, Measure A. I'd like them to look at what's in our municipal code. I'd like to get some analysis from our legal team on how this prohibition in our municipal code supports or doesn't support our ability to stop offshore oil or gas development. The list of things I read earlier still exists. I think that we're moving forward with some dynamic infrastructure projects, and we need to know the answers to ocean outfall, at least as they can be potentially answered now. We need to address historically that for the last 2 decades, this fishing community has not supported a national sanctuary. National Marine Sanctuary, and we need to address those issues if we're ever going to speak with a unified voice, even close to what the original Marine Protection Act had hoped people would do. And I will say, even the CMB resolutions that are that the group that advocates for these issues in Washington, that the city is a member of, they're not definitive. I would like everybody to see that resolution for what it is. It hasn't been updated by this council. It's been existing for a long time, but that's not definitive, and it brings out specific questions that Mayor Irons, you have brought out tonight. So I feel like there's a lot more information that needs to be given to the public, and I think we're a community in transition. I think that what I'm learning is that likely, well, we all learn. This isn't going to go away. It isn't going to be that the city of Morro Bay is going to stop being lobbied, or we're not going to. This isn't the last application of a national marine sanctuary that we're going to see. This has been a constant process. So, so for me, not to sort of have a broader conversation about it, we clearly have 2 very passionate groups in our community, and it wouldn't be right to favor one group over another based on what I've heard tonight and what I've had a chance to read since last Wednesday or Thursday. So there are a significant amount of people in our community who do support a sanctuary. There are a significant amount of people who do not. And I think this evening we've gone a long way to speak respectfully to one another about our opinions. I think it's very difficult when you've been fighting against something or wanting to advocate for something for over 2 decades, and it hasn't quite either. Here it is again. I thought we beat that back, or why won't they just get into place this time? So at least I think that we've gained a lot by the conversation. So I suggest that somehow we discuss what our options are for continuing the item and bring it back, and we craft something. Either a resolution, take a look at the current resolution. It stands unless we somehow rescind it and replace it with something that reflects where I hear us going, which is not what this resolution 1812 says. It doesn't do anything to address some of the advocacy pieces that I've heard the mayor talk about. It doesn't really do anything to address the open conversation I've heard, Councilmember Smuckler and Councilmember Heading wish for. I'm just looking for where we go next, because we can call for a vote, but I'm unable to vote yes or no this evening. So maybe the rest of you could, and I'd like to hear that. And if not, then maybe we need to find out what a next step would be. So thanks.
Thanks, Christine. Just a response to some of my points that may have led to suggest that that's the direction I was hoping the rest of council will go. I think maybe I didn't articulate that as well as I wanted to, but I think for me to take a position of opposing the nomination, I wanted to give an outline of specific reasons, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the answer. That is what I've learned. I totally appreciate that the positions my council colleagues are taking on wanting more information to make this decision, and maybe I felt as though, and clearly I did through my remarks and research, that this is the position that I took. So going back to where the rest of council goes, I think the alternatives that we have is do not take a support or oppose role, which means the resolution 1812 would stand. We can adopt the Harbor Advisory Board sanctuary letter, which it doesn't seem we have support for that. Am I assuming that is we don't have support for that? And then as far as do not recommend, we don't take any of the recommendations, and we direct staff to write a sanctuary support letter or opposition letter or support letter and have for the mayor's signature. And it seems as though we're pretty much at a stalemate at all of the above, with the exception of number 3, and that's do not take a support or oppose on this item, and then maybe make direction for a future agenda item to discuss what a different resolution might look like. Any comments to that?
Yeah. Before we hear from staff, I think it's important that we do engage on this issue, and I think I heard agreement on that. The items that you brought up, Mayor Irons, about your interest and concern to try to address some of the functionality of the Sanctuary Act and the process there. I think those are valid questions, and I'd be very interested to hear NOAA's response to those and to collaborate with the existing sanctuaries as well as our local advocates on both sides to try to address those. I think that's a noble effort and worth the discussion. My thought would be, let's reach out to NOAA and get them in the room directly, because we've talked about this quite a bit. I had the opportunity to speak today with the director on the West Coast, but our community hasn't. And until we begin the dialogue more directly, we're going to be floundering with these different questions and nuances. From what I gleaned today in my conversation with the director, this process is going to continue regardless of what our comments are. So we better be ready and mature in how we engage. And I think we could perhaps revisit this with some discussion about what our action would be as to resolutions, trying to utilize the Harbor Advisory Board's comments, public comment we heard tonight, our own individual concern, try to actually craft something that captures all the different angles initially that we'd like to address, and engage then with NOAA and come up with a plan to have some better community discussions. And I'll end just by saying that you mentioned the statewide process potentially to ban offshore oil. Mm-hmm. I think there's nothing wrong with a dual approach to that. And I think there are other benefits that the sanctuary could bring. I will point out that there is one thing that's fairly clear, is that this community, Morro Bay, as well as the county, based on these historical resolutions and municipal code adoptions, is against offshore oil expansion. So that I don't have a problem with a dual approach to that. It's great if we have a double protection measure established with the state, and then also concurrently engaging with the sanctuary process. And that's, to me, consistent with what our community is asking for and has clearly been on the record saying that they'd like.
John?
Are we up against a strict timeline? I was trying. Is there a drop dead date for comments? Is it the?
No, there's no drop dead date. There's just a date at which NOAA, not you, NOAA, is going to make a decision on whether or not to place this sanctuary nomination on their inventory list. That date is estimated to be October 5th by Bill Duros, the Western Regional Director. They, as you stated, they will make a decision one way or another, regardless of what action we take or not take.
Then that's
tonight.
a drop-dead date. In essence, if we would, I'm just thinking out loud that if we want any comments from this community included in that debate, then that becomes the date by which we have to adhere to in order to complete this process. And for me, I am not discounting anything that anybody said, but there was a prevalence of anecdotes again, and I deal with as much fact and truth that I can find that's documented, and I need to find that before I'm comfortable putting down on paper anything that either supports or does not support this.
You're good? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Staff,
may I just suggest maybe an approach, just to see if there's something that could get us to move on and have you take some action. You have the Harbor Advisory Board unanimously saying don't support this sanctuary. What if you prepared a resolution that made that statement but said, unless these things happen? I think there was a consensus, I may be wrong, but I think there was a consensus that you want to make sure that there's local control. You want to make sure that there's no oil. You want to make sure that the fishermen have the ability to continue their operations. You want to make sure that your harbor isn't going to be affected so that you can do the dredging without that being a problem. There were a list of 6 or 7 things that it seemed that I don't think the public that spoke would be against those 7 things, or however many things there were, and the council seemed in agreement. So what if we crafted for you a resolution that said, which way you want it to say is up to you, but I was thinking because the Harbor Advisory Board unanimously said don't support it, have the resolution say we agree with the Harbor Advisory Board, we don't support the sanctuary unless these 7 things happen, and have that be the message that you send NOAA.
Noah? Thanks, Joe. Any comments on that strategy?
I personally wouldn't be able to support a resolution that says I oppose. I'm interested in engaging and learning more and working to address these concerns. I have very serious concerns about how a sanctuary could be established and the details of that. I'm not ready to put myself into a camp. I think hearing the attorney, Mr. Pannone, talk about couching opposition unless these things are addressed is basically puts us in a corner. If they're not addressed, then we have no other option. And I think this is a more dynamic process than that. And I think we should probably lead with direct communication. And if it means that we don't have specific stance one way or the other when it comes to this first phase, at least we're at the table and we're communicating the key things that we think need to be addressed.
John, you had some comments?
Just so the way I hear it, it could be we support the sanctuary proposal if these guarantees occur, or it could say we do not support it unless these guarantees occur. Right?
That's what I was trying to communicate. I'd also just like to add that you currently have an official city position. you have a resolution. So unless you do something, that's the city position. So if you want to have a different communication to NOAA than currently is on the books, you need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I might ask my colleague to the right, were you considering having a public forum with NOAA available? NOAA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So.
So basically,
Kinda-
what we're saying is we're not going to take we wouldn't be taking a position until we get the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration here to help us discuss the sanctuary. So for tonight, we're not going to take any position at all.
Which would mean by default, if we couldn't get them here by the 5th, that the existing document becomes the position.
But you don't have to communicate that to NOAA. You could just not do anything.
Right.
I mean, you have a city position, but that doesn't mean you have to communicate it based on this particular
I'm very uncomfortable
application.
not doing anything. I just think this is too important to the community not to. I'm just saying, Joe, just to address. I think it has to be addressed. And
So maybe there's support from 3 of us on the council to rescind Resolution 1812 is what I'm hearing, because we don't want to leave that. It sounds like from the majority of council, we don't want to leave a resolution hanging there. We want to address that. So it seems to me if someone made that motion to rescind that resolution, that's what would take place, and we wouldn't have a position at all on the sanctuary. That's what Joe. You're explaining that the resolution either has to be rescinded if we don't, unless we leave it alone. Then that effectively is our position if we're not rescinding it.
That's what that resolution says. That's your
Yeah.
official position.
So
I mean, the city's official position.
So at that point, I think if the majority of council doesn't want that to be their resolution, then we should just make the motion and have the vote on the resolution in of itself. Christine?
I need to be clear. I believe that we are a community in transition on this issue. I think that this will continue to come to Morro Bay. Morro Bay has continued to say no based on a list of items in Resolution 1812 that don't have many concerns I've expressed tonight. This is a more narrow view, taking 1 or 2 issues of continuing concern, but it doesn't reflect many things in my notes that I'd like to be on record at this point to say these are Morro Bay's concerns, because they're new concerns that we didn't have in 2012. So what I would prefer to do is make a very clear statement tonight that we've heard a lot of public input. This was our first opportunity to have this issue come before the public in the way that it has. And I honestly, I'm sorry we didn't get to this sooner. We had tried to have some public outreach prior to tonight when we're under the gun, but it's not the time to craft a new resolution, in my opinion. And I'm also not comfortable tonight just taking this one and saying no, because but I'd like to have a plan for how we would address if we decide that we want to hear directly from the federal agency that would be coming here. Then I think we call them and say, well, you've told us once that October 5 is your drop dead date, but here's what happened at our council meeting, and are you able to come and speak directly to the public and answer some of these questions and expand on what we've seen? And perhaps they would say, for Morro Bay, okay, then we'll give you an extension. And Eric, you mentioned something after the questions. Did you say that the county has this on their agenda, or that they had it on their agenda for the Board of Supervisors? And what if we combine some kind of a visit when they come for that? Could they come for something else? I just feel like...
From what I understand, at this Board of Supervisors last meeting, they requested staff to bring back a more thorough, robust discussion on the matter. They wanted more information.
Okay, so they're in
I
the same.
don't know that it's on a future agenda on a date specific at this point. That's my understanding of that meeting.
Okay, so could we get I mean, I have to say, I wish I had all the time in the world to follow the Board of Supervisors. I don't, but there's a staff report that I'm assuming is what you've seen. There's a staff report that the county staff have presented to the public at the Board of Supervisors. Do we know?
I assume there is. I have not personally seen it.
Okay. Sure.
John?
I would move that we let the existing document stand and invite representatives from NOAA to come to the community as soon as possible to a public forum to have a question and answer session both with the community at large as well as the city council. After which time a resolution could be considered by the city council at the appropriate future meeting.
Do I have a second? That's a good motion. I'll second it for discussion. So we're going to let the existing resolution stand, invite NOAA as soon as possible for a workshop to include public, council, and after such time a resolution may be crafted to address our concerns and take a position is the motion. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Christine?
Yes. So we should review that with staff to see where that fits into the schedule between now and mid-October.
I would say that it is highly unlikely, from my experience with the federal government and even their regional agencies, that between now and the 5th of October that we will achieve a local forum with regional NOAA representatives and be able to get back to council for action. I state that because there's a special council meeting on September the 29th, and that's a week from tonight. And then 2 weeks after that is a regular council meeting. So I think that's, I don't think that is voiced in concern or opposition to this motion. I think what is likely going to be the case, having just observed the council deliberation, is that there may be no fresh communication from the city of Morro Bay within this 60-day comment period, and that may well be so, and that's going to be a fact, assuming they make a decision on or about the 5th of October, unless unless we do something very quickly tonight or next week, or in another special meeting. When I say do something, the council crafts a resolution. And going back to where I started and what your question was, I don't think that's going to happen, and there's going to be a NOAA forum between now and then. But I could be wrong. Maybe they might react much more quickly. But I'm skeptical of that.
I'm not sure the motion said by October 5th. It may have been as soon as possible. And I wasn't particularly concerned about that.
And I heard that, but what I heard the question was, would it be in time? I think that's what I think what was asked was.
But I don't think we've been clear, and we've been bouncing things back and forth, certainly about the time frame that we're in. So
I appreciate
That's
that
fine.
the motion does not have a date certain that this needs to be accomplished, and all I was trying to do was state that I acknowledge that, and I think it is very unlikely that we'll achieve a council resolution with a NOAA outreach forum by October 5th, and I don't think that is necessarily having observed you, I'm not sure that's a requirement.
And from a practical perspective, the word, using that word, the worst that would happen is if you don't respond by the 5th, you won't have any input in by the 5th, and they may put it on their inventory list. But that just provides more input time, which you'd be able to do all that meeting and whatnot that you want to do, and then pass a resolution.
Any further discussion? Noah?
Well, I'm quickly revisiting the resolution. There are things in here that I'm uncomfortable with. I think there are things in here that are accurate, and I do have some concerns about. I think I'm going to have to vote no on the motion, though, as it stands.
Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No. Motion carries 3-1. So any further discussion on direction from this? I think we covered where we want to go for education purposes as far as coming back with NOAA. Is there any other further discussion from the board?
Yeah, I would like just a bit more conversation about, from Mr. Heading, how this next the communication, the second half of your motion, basically supporting the resolution, but then taking the next step to reach out to NOAA. If we can, just speak briefly about how that would be laid out, the communication paired with our resolution.
Could you ask me again? I'm not clear.
How do we anticipate framing the action tonight and the next step in the communication to NOAA to try to compel community engagement?
Okay. My thought was that even if we tried, the 5th was impossible. Therefore, that's why I did not indicate by the 5th. The assumption was that at least, and I think it's very important to have an open debate in the community, a further open debate with more facts directly from the federal government, and then potentially take a position at that time. But I wanted the existing position to remain since I did not want this council, or I felt that we should not have any documentation to fall back on, I guess.
So, I don't know if Dana, if the second half of your motion, if you could read that again.
I've got it on my notes. Let the existing resolution stand. Invite NOAA as soon as possible for a workshop, community council outreach, after which time a resolution can be crafted based on that information.
Okay, and will that be staff then? I just want to get a little more detail of what these next steps would be. Would that be staff then that's going to be drafting and submitting that letter, or Mayor Irons, or who's responsible?
I think
for
that would come back to us. Absolutely.
No, the invitation to NOAA for the public forum?
I took that as that would be a staff action.
Okay.
That the staff will communicate to NOAA and essentially, I guess I'll look for some guidance here, but what I would communicate is that the council continues to deliberate this with great input from the community. The council's identified a need for the community to interact with the federal agency that is responsible for this, and would therefore invite them to come to the community so that the council and the community can interact, have questions and answers, have a public forum, and then at some time after that, the resolution says the council will consider further action.
Okay.
Okay.
So what else take away is that you likely won't address any sanctuary issues until we manage to get NOAA here for a community forum.
So it
Or a
goes.
response from them.
Or at least a response, right
One
on.
way or another, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Noah. Okay, thanks very much. And that'll conclude item D3 on our agenda. And I'm going to look to Mr. Buckingham. Maybe we can talk about priorities on what we want to do with the agenda. We have, I think, the water reclamation facility proposed outreach program. Is that time sensitive? You want to?
It is-ish. So there are 4 items on the agenda. We certainly don't recommend trying to get through 4. In fact, we don't even try to recommend getting through 3. But considering getting through the WRF outreach program, if the council has had the opportunity to read the staff report and sort of digest that, which you are very diligent council members, so, and I've seen your questions about it today, so I anticipate that you have. I think it will likely take us past 11 since it's 8 minutes till, but I don't think it has to take us past even 11:15, perhaps. So, with that, if the council is comfortable going till 11:15 or so, then I think it would be good for the whole community for you to approve the community outreach program for the WRF, so that we can start outreaching based on your guidance. And in fact, there is an event tentatively scheduled for October 17th that we really sort of want to know whether we should execute or not under your direction.
With that, I would just, if there's consensus, to move through with the WRF outreach program, and then we can continue the other 2 items. So basically, we need a motion to go beyond 11 o'clock, maybe conclude this by 11:15 or so. Christine?
I would hope that if we're going to go past 11 anyway, that we could also get in D1. I would make that offer to council.
I would agree. I think we should address at least preliminarily
Okay.
D1.
Okay, I'm open for that. Anybody else? Okay, so I'd just make a motion to go beyond 11 o'clock. I have a motion by Mayor Ayers, a second by Councilmember Heading. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, item C1. And I believe we have, Rob, you leading us on that, or is Mr. Nunley?
Mr. Nunley will be. He'll be right up in just a second.
Have a seat.
Hey, Mike. Good. So, Mayor and Council and community, this item is the Water Reclamation Project Outreach Program. You considered much of this at a special council meeting with the WRF-CAC. Sure, I got my meetings right. Yes, about 4 weeks ago. And so this is the formal presentation of the outreach program for your approval, presented by Mike Nunley, who, as you know, is our program manager for the WRF project.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do, I've put together a brief PowerPoint presentation.
Is that?
Is that better?
Yep, thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I put together a brief PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the items from the outreach plan. You have the plan in front of you. The outreach plan really is is a quote living document, and so our intention really is to present what we see are the key outreach objectives and goals, and also to talk in a little more detail on what happens over the next 60 days. But this outreach plan will continue to be updated and modified as we move forward, as we learn more information from the various stakeholder groups, as we have meetings and learn where the public needs more information, or where council, what council might want to explore more, or perhaps WRF-CAC. So I'll start with that. First, what I'd like to point out is our draft logo for the water reclamation facility project. And so this has been presented to WRFCAC in draft form. We've gotten comments back from a few members. This was put together by the graphic artists at RRM as part of the outreach program. And it's draft form for now, so we're open to any comments or thoughts you have on it. So the key members of the outreach team include my firm and John Rickenbach with JFR, as well as RRM Design Group. And really it's the same outreach team, as you know, that we had for the siting study. So Debbie Rudd with RRM is going to be leading community workshops, and John Rickenbach will also be leading the full outreach effort as the deputy program manager. And one of the key things I want to always bring us back to at meetings are to talk about council goals. Just to remind the public and council what these are really the goals that drive everything we do on the program, whether it's the outreach, the technical work, and all the efforts that are underway. So the goals, and I've tried to highlight or underline really the key parts of each goal. First is producing tertiary disinfected wastewater at a minimum. Second is producing reclaimed wastewater for potential users. Third is allow for on-site composting or consider on-site composting. Fourth is designing for energy recovery. Fifth is designing to treat contaminants of emerging concern in the future. Next is designing to allow for other possible municipal functions at the proposed wharf site, ensuring compatibility with the neighboring land uses, and then meeting the council's 5-year goal. So the stakeholders that we see in this effort are the general public, of course, City Council and the Citizens Advisory Committee, the potential recycled water customers, interested public agencies, and then also industry. And you'll see we have a table in the outreach plan that we'd originally put together in a conceptual form in the workshop that we had back in August that was the overview of the program management approach. So the various outreach efforts that we've described in the outreach plan, and I won't walk through every bullet of the 3 or 4 page table, but first are the stakeholder interviews. We've scheduled these for a couple of days, looking at 12 to 15 stakeholders, and that group or the listing will be brought to WRFCAC at their next meeting on October the 6th for their input. And these stakeholders will include representatives of all the groups we just identified on the last page, some regulatory agencies, members of the public who've been particularly vocal in the past, and it will closely resemble the first efforts that we had in the siting study a couple of years ago, where we did a similar outreach effort, and this outreach effort is geared now towards, okay, now we're moving forward on a program, and you know, so meetings with the regulatory and funding agencies, and the frequency on those will be to be determined and as needed as we move forward with permitting and with funding. Website development and updates is going to be really key for communicating with the public, with industry, and with the various stakeholders. Potential recycled water customers, reaching out to them. Reaching out to interested public agencies on one-on-one basis. Council study sessions, WRFCAC meetings. We have 3 technical presentations that we've scheduled tentatively at this point that you'll see in the listing. We have 4 community workshops that we've identified, and there will be more going out past the next 3 or 4 months, but we're just trying to get what we can in the near term scheduled to keep the facility master plan moving forward and keep the various efforts on track. Public hearings, and then industry informational sessions. So as I said, I'm glad to answer questions on the outreach plan itself, and I didn't want to walk through every page of that, but I did want to highlight some workshops that are going to occur in the next 60 days. So community workshop number 1 will be a process and goals review, education and feedback. We're looking at somewhere in the mid-October range for that, so work with staff on how to schedule that. But really it's a review of city goals, an overview of the facility master plan process, and then receive community input on facilities programming, so what else could occur at the proposed site, and then also look at visual and design issues or concerns. So those are some key topics we've identified for this first community workshop. We have a technical presentation that's already scheduled for October the 17th, and I'll be presenting on alternative delivery approaches, and we'll discuss the terms and the constraints and the opportunities, such as design, build, operate, finance, or design, build, operate, or construction management at risk. And we'll walk through those. And the objective isn't for council to make a decision that day. It's really to provide information to council and the public so that a decision could be made later. Really, the delivery decision doesn't need to occur until after we get through the facility master plan. But it's important to bring this information out now and have a chance for council to review and discuss it. A general plan and local coastal plan workshop is another one that we've discussed, and that would be done jointly with the city planning team to look at the general plan and local coastal plan concepts in the context of the facility master plan, because we're looking at future flows and loadings, for example, and we want to make sure what we're doing is consistent with that. And then there are also the general plan requirements for reuse. We want to make sure that we've aligned a project with that general planning process so that both are being well coordinated with each other. And we're looking at the November to December timeframe for that. And technical presentation number 2 is we're proposing as a joint WRFCAC and council work session possibly, and the tentative date we had on there was November 17th. But again, that's tentative for now, and but the objective is to discuss the liquid treatment technologies to be evaluated in the facility master plan. So that's when we'll really get a good detailed technical presentation from the facility master plan team on the different liquid treatment technologies that they're evaluating. So some input that we had from WRFCAC on our presentation of the outreach plan concepts I wanted to share with you, because some of these bullets or items will be important for when we update the plan, also important in the implementation of the plan. So I wanted to run through those. First, one comment was to consider hosting monthly meetings or conference calls with the regulatory and funding agencies. A sub-item there was to host meetings periodically with senior management from the permitting agencies. That's something that we're going to consider. Once we get our CEQA and NEPA team on board, we'll work with them on the best approach to involve the regulatory agencies. And we'll also work with our funding consultant, Kestrel Consulting, on the approach with funding. And as you all know, we've already submitted the State Water Board grant application. That went in a little over a week ago. And we expect to hear word on that within 6 to 8 weeks from when it's submitted. And that was a grant application for $75,000. The city matches $75,000, so it's specifically for development of the master reclamation plan. A couple of items were noted were to specify the number of handouts and the number of fact sheets and when they'll be issued. Also specifying metrics for gauging success of the outreach program. What we would say for now really is we'll work on those details as we move forward. And a lot of it will depend on some of the initial stakeholder efforts, because we want to make sure we're putting together materials that present information that folks have questions on or where they need clarity, and we target the right message, and we put the right educational information together for that. Developing brochures and distributing those to households as well as with bills. So the delivery of that came up at WRFCAC, and we thought that was a good point. Some folks pay their bills electronically and don't get bill stuffers. So we'll work on ways to best communicate with everybody or distribute those. Meeting with Chairman Diodati to discuss outreach for the Los Osos wastewater project, something we've planned to do. Note lessons learned and also see if there are any outreach materials that we could possibly reuse for this program. Issuing press releases when key milestones are reached, and then considering daytime and nighttime availability when scheduling activities. So these will all be part of the outreach efforts and part of what we consider as we move forward. We'll continue to work with WRFCAC to present concepts and lay them out and get their feedback, and then also bring those to council. So some next steps that we've identified are continuing to expand and update the outreach plan. And we'll do that as team members are added, as key milestones are reached. So, for instance, when we finish the draft facility master plan, as new information is collected through stakeholder interviews and community workshops. Another near-term activity is planning and attending the stakeholder interviews. And so we're assuming, again, 2 days, 10 to 15 interviews with representative groups, and we'll work with WRFCAC on identifying and reviewing those at the October 6th meeting, and then coordinating these October and November workshops. So those are the near-term activities on the outreach plan. And so at this point, I would ask for any questions or open for discussion.
Any questions? Christine, you want to start us off with questions? John? Noah? John?
No. Just a couple, and I meant to email these to you, but I didn't get a chance to, John. No. Somewhere in there, could we add elected officials to outreach?
Yes.
I don't know if that's been mentioned, but that would be good to do. And then also I had on your website development promotional materials, Channel 20 is a good addition because a lot of the folks that are at home watch that channel, believe it or not. And then also I assumed under that website development and promotional materials that social media, Facebook, and all that stuff is included. But it just said website.
Okay.
Thank you. And the only other comment I had was the budget review that had to do with the financial report, which I think is on page. Well, they're not paginated, so I'm not sure. It's under City Council hearing where it says formal update of schedule, budget, and cash flow, February 2016. I'm looking for when the next one might be. Is that? I guess I'd like to see it fairly routinely, so maybe that'll come from Rob in our routine council reports, statement of cash flows, and
one thing I'll say is, so you'll have a monthly update from us in terms of these expenditures.
Okay.
So you'll get that every month. And then we'll also do quarterly updates on cash flow and budget status.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
Yeah, good.
Noah?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to also add, I didn't see it in there, the Estero Bay Community Radio as a good outreach tool. And then I have asked regarding where the Cal Poly Civil and Environmental Engineering Department could fall into our outreach. I'm definitely open to suggestions from you about that, but I do think it's important that we include them, knowing that they have partnered with other communities in the county to support water reclamation and innovation, and they are definitely a resource we should take advantage of. So I'm not sure where you think they would best fit in, but I do believe that they should be included.
We'll do that.
Yeah. Do you have any specific ideas about what designation they would fit under?
So a few concepts there. I do quite a bit of work with Trigger Lundquist there. Worked with him on projects, and have also been involved with students and in going and presenting to classes. And I've been one of the senior design reviewers for the civil class for a long time. So a couple of concepts that I've thought about is depending on, a few years ago, they actually developed a design for the plant, and in one of their design classes. Depending on what the schedule is in their classes, I could see inviting them to come participate in some of these community workshops. I could see working with Dr. Lundquist and also with Dr. Vigil there to determine, based on the timing of their assignments, that there might be some element of this that they could look at. Another thing we've done in the past is we've actually worked with Cal Poly for them to provide grad students for sampling and for analysis and doing lab work and that sort of thing. So a number of concepts we could explore there. So I think a good first step might just be to talk to Trig and put some bullets together and be prepared to bring those back to WRFCAC. Okay.
Thanks, Noah. And I believe we mentioned to consider WRFCAC to report to council. That might be a discussion at a joint meeting, but if it's an outreach, I think maybe that's part of the schedule during some of your monthly or quarterly reports. Perhaps after we deliberate a little bit more with our in a joint meeting, but consider WRFCAC, maybe the chair reporting back as part of that schedule. The water bills, electronic portion of that, you mentioned that the electronic payments, you don't have the water bills. Can you explain that part?
Well, this was a comment a discussion that came up with the WRFCAC members, actually. One was that I think one of the members had mentioned, well, he pays his bills online, therefore he doesn't receive a mailer.
Okay.
I couldn't validate that.
I think what he said is he gets it in the mail, but he's already paid it online,
right.
So it immediately goes into the recycling.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the other question is, electronically, do we have that connection? I do the same, but I still open my bill and look at it.
Yeah, he may just be using a bill pay service for all I know, where they're sending an actual check. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm sure we'd be creative on somehow to make sure we're doing that.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like their point really too was just find ways that consider that folks may not always read the mailers.
Okay.
And door hangers was a concept that they brought up, and just a few other ideas. So we'll work on those.
Okay. With that concludes council questions. I'll open it for public comment for those who'd like to speak to this item. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Any further discussion? Receive, and we're clear on that. Yep.
Could I,
Christine?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I thought it was very clearly laid out. I think the color whose colors what, it's good. It's easy for us to read it that way. I think everyone sees who's represented. I think it's very thorough, to be honest, and I appreciate you getting things 60 days out so we can, set our calendars and let the public know that things are coming and this will be coming forward. And I think everyone's excited about the upcoming public outreach, and I think we'll get a lot of people to attend as long as we make sure we're promoting it. And I think we're doing it many times on Saturday, I believe, which I think is important. So I just want to say thanks. I think it's a great effort.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Anybody else? Seeing none, I don't think we need a motion on this. We have... We're clear on this. Everything's as proposed. We're all good with that. There's no other suggested changes.
I believe the recommendation... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the recommendation was that that council review the proposed outreach program and provide comment and feedback as needed to refine the program. So
okay, I think the comments have been received. Okay, yes, sir.
So I'd just like to note that as we discussed in the joint meeting with the WRFCAC, was that a joint meeting? We were in the community center. I'm sorry, it was not a joint meeting with the WRFCAC, but in that first outreach meeting, we discussed the pros and cons of how to execute these two technical education sections, and the council was comfortable not having a sort of show and tell with various delivery option consultants and contractors and various treatment technology consultants and contractors being given floor time. So I just want to make it clear that is not part of the proposal, and that we are, based on the guidance we got then, we developed this outreach plan, and sounds like that you're fine with it, and we'll move forward with it.
Great, thanks, Dave. And with that concludes our C1 staff report for water reclamation facility proposed outreach program, and we can move on to item D1, which is a discussion of next steps for automated water meter reading and consolidated billing. Mr. Leivik, or no, this is Mr. Buckingham. Pardon me.
Oh, and look, it's up. Great. Where'd that clicker go? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, and perhaps if we move through this one, you might want to consider tacking on the code enforcement item so that we can get on with communicating that to the community. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. So the purpose of this is to receive direction from the council on the next step for automated meter reading and billing. Staff recommends that the council send this item back to the PWAB for further expert analysis and consideration before the item comes to the council for consideration and decision. Or council could direct staff to reject the current proposal from Fathom Water to release another RFP, doing additional outreach to potential proposing businesses in order to try to get more than one proposal, and then to take those responses back through the full process. Or the council could bring the current Fathom proposal, or you could direct staff to bring the current Fathom proposal to the council now for consideration and decision. I'll note that all of these things are process questions. This item is a process item. What's the next step? Not sort of content. So we're not tonight advocating one way or the other for automated meter, consolidated meter reading and billing. I will note that staff does not recommend the council reject the proposal out of hand. We recommend that for two reasons. First, the council formally, as a council, identified automated meter infrastructure as an objective this year, and it's appropriate for the council to consider that question, for the council to bring it to council level for consideration, regardless of the positive or negative recommendations from various advisory bodies or from the staff. It's an objective you set, and we think you want to make a decision on that. Also, a majority of the PWAB at least appeared to want more information, more analysis, and more research on how to improve this proposal, including better financial analysis. So our sense was that that at the PWAB meeting there was primarily an interest and a thirst for additional information, additional options, additional analysis, and staff is prepared and looking forward to giving the PWAB that should you direct us to. Quick background: in February this year, you established goals and objectives. Goal 10F directed staff to, quote, research and bring to council for decision a contract arrangement for automated water meter reading and comprehensive billing. In April, staff released an RFP with a 5-week response time and received one response. Staff took that proposal to the PWAB twice. In July, although staff did not have a complete, well-analyzed, well-presented financial data, the PWAB forwarded the proposal to council with a negative recommendation. The PWAB had three main areas of concern. One was finances, another was timing, and one was that there was only one response to the RFP. Briefly, those PWAB concerns and finances. Since that time, staff has gathered additional information on the financial situation and better analyzed it, is prepared to present it in a more precise and reliable and understandable fashion. And I think the PWAB clearly expressed that they were wanting a clear financial presentation. Timing, the PWAB expressed some concern about the timing of the proposal juxtaposed with what were then the very recent water rate increase. There was likely some confusion on the proposal and whether or not the proposal might have an effect on water rates. There was I think it's fair to say, a significant amount of confusion on that question, that it was interpreted partially because of the way that the staff report was written, that this was an increase to monthly water rates, and it was not, but there was significant confusion on that. And finally, the PWAB was concerned that there was only a single response to the RFP. The PWAB was also concerned that the city received, only one response. While that is not unusual to receive only one response to an RFP, neither is it an unreasonable concern. So that's a legitimate concern that we should consider. Quick discussion. The question at hand is, what is the most appropriate next step in the process? The council could certainly take the proposal up as it is. A number of PWAB members expressed an interest in getting better information and having additional alternatives presented to the PWAB because they did see that there could be significant cost savings to the city should we install more accurate meters, but they were also concerned about the cost of it, and so they were wanting staff to do some additional research to present alternative methods to having better accounting for our water while perhaps not going all the way to a consolidated system. So staff believes the next best step is for staff to complete the research and the analysis that the PWAB asked for and to take that back to the PWAB for their consideration. Or if council prefers to take up the item for decision at a future meeting, or you could direct staff to reject the current proposal and go back out with another RFP. So again, our recommendation is that you send this item back to the PWAB, let the staff put together a more comprehensive and clearer presentation for the PWAB, specifically addressing some of their concerns. And finally, before wrapping up, I'll just note that during that PWAB meeting, and this could well be poor communication between the staff and the PWAB. I've already said that I think the staff, we all agree that we could have done a better job laying out some of the, especially the financial data associated with the project. But also, the PWAB felt compelled to act at that meeting. Staff did not sort of intervene and say, "Hey, you don't have to you don't have to make a recommendation at this meeting. We can bring this back to you again." That's at least my interpretation. Is that there were 7 members of the PWAB, many of whom expressed interest, expressed a desire for additional information, and then they felt, and maybe we had communicated to them that it was really important to take this to the council or to keep this moving, and if so, then apologize. The staff did not try to convey that, but in any case, the PWAB made a recommendation and sent it to council. So we thought the most appropriate thing to do next would be to say, you've received a recommendation from the PWAB, and what do you want to do next in the process? Ask the PWAB to take a second look, or reject the proposal that's in hand and tell staff to go out with another RFP, or say, hey, bring this to us for consideration and deliberation and decision at a future council meeting. That concludes the presentation.
Great, thanks, Dave. Questions? John? Noah? Christine? Okay, I've got a few. We mentioned that this was one of our goals, and when I'm looking at the goals now, goals improve city operations. I think if we go into an explanation of the goals, I think this was born out of, and I think it's worth explaining, born partly out of management partners and staff recommendation. As we came through water meter and billing, and I think that's worthwhile clarifying where the goal was born out of, and maybe I'm looking at Rob. I know maybe you can elaborate a little bit more.
Yes, I believe so. That under the subheading or the heading of improve city operations, this was one of the recommendations that came out of staff that not only to consolidate our meter reading, which we already contract out for, it's already outsourced. Most of our mailing is already outsourced. All of our mailing is outsourced from another vendor, but to combine that all and then to go with the more efficient automatic meter reading, where we would capture all the water that goes through a meter onto a bill. So I think that's where the concern, a lot of the concern over rates came in, is old meters slip. So water goes through the meter without being registered. This would more accurate meters don't let that happen.
So you touched on it a little bit, but I guess that was the other thing. There were some email and comments about contracting out services, and we already do that.
We already do contract out with Alexander's meter reading of Atascadero. You see the guys on the scooters around town. Those are not city employees. We don't have city scooters or tricycles. Those are Alexander's employees, and they read meters for many cities in this area. In fact, a lot of Southern California. And then we contract out with...
I'll take that with InfoSend, that's based in Anaheim, California. So they have the contract to mail the bills each month. And there's a third contract with New World Systems, who is our accounting firm. So circling, and that's to provide the accounting and management software that allows us to provide the billing information to InfoSend. So why is this under improved city operations? One reason is because a management best practice, and management all over the place, is to consolidate contracts when you can, and instead of having 3 or 4 different contracts, to consolidate those into one. And so that was one of the reasons. The second reason was because there was a potential because of the near certainty that our old meters are not registering usage appropriately, and therefore we are not billing appropriately, and other sort of efficiencies in City Hall, in the water system, that might be gained by looking at a system such as this.
And then we get the benefit of, for those folks that want to use it, water conservation data. So you can see, rather than waiting for the end of the month when your bill comes, you could know on a daily basis, or for those people that want to carry it around on their smartphone, on an hourly basis, what their water usage is. Now, I don't know that everybody will take advantage of that, but it does give that option. And the other benefit to that is, I know we're not supposed to get into the details of the merits of the item.
So thanks for that. So who's using the technology now? Do we have any information on who's using the smart meter technology for waters?
In this area?
Anywhere.
Grass Valley, California was the example that's most cited by the vendor in California. Central Arizona, Texas, many people are using this technology. Other places are using, especially larger utilities that have a larger billing staff. They might put the electronic meters and manage those themselves, and actually produce the bills and do the reads themselves. There's just no, for a water utility our size, we don't get the efficiencies of buying lots of meters, doing that, or staffing up to manage basically a radio repeater system in the city for that.
Okay.
As one data point, the company that responded to the RFP has 9 million meters under their management.
Okay, great. If there's no further questions from council, I'll open it for public comment. For anybody who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward. Welcome.
Good evening, Council and staff. My name is Rick Deschler, Morro Bay resident. I believe that you need to drop the automated water meter concept from your priority goals list and focus on more important issues. No need to send it back to PWAB. Kill it now. Your staff report suggested the recommendations that are up there and two alternatives. I believe you should ignore all of those and opt for another alternative, which would be to remove this from your priority goals and end pursuit of automated water meter systems. As I indicated in my letter to Council last month, this overzealous project is using a sledgehammer to swat a fly. I listed several items that I thought were, could be considered fatal flaws to be proposed to the proposed solution. Any existing problems with our water meters and billings can be resolved without this multi-million-dollar high-tech solution. Continue to replace defective meters with standard meters. The new meters are still going to wear out. Whether they're automated meters or not, they're still going to fail after a number of years. Neither the city of San Luis Obispo nor San Luis Obispo County Public Works have any plans or interest in going with automated water meters. They indicated that it was too expensive and wasn't needed. Why are we the only community in San Luis Obispo County pursuing automated water meters? I understand your interest in consolidating and trying to be more efficient, but this is too expensive. Even after PWAB heard the presentation twice, they gave it a negative recommendation. But the Public Works Department is still pushing the idea because you set it as a priority. Only you can change that, and you can do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Nancy Bast. With this proposal, we lose local control. Our money goes to Phoenix. Local jobs are lost. A 15-year locked-in contract. Additional annual rate increases plus interest on a new multi-million-dollar loan needed to fund it. The staff report contends that public and PWAB opposition is based primarily on a lack of full information and that we were confused. I felt all 17 public speakers at PWAB were given more information than needed to reject the entire scheme, even though the project was presented out of the blue and fast-tracked for approval. This staff report doesn't provide the new updated and refined financial figures, so they cannot be analyzed prior to tonight's presentation. Another shock and awe tactic. Justification for this project is the revenue that is lost to under-registering old water meters. However, we know that many do not need replacement. The ones that are replaced will be exactly like the ones we have. The previous stated estimate of lost revenue is an average of less than $20 per meter annually. The solution would seem simply to speed up the program that already is being done by Public Works to replace old meters. I feel that Mr. Buckingham is forcing major changes to issues where there are no problems. He noted the bid process required a good deal of time and cost to fathom. I question why the bid process was initiated without public discussion of a need for an RFP that specified a consolidated automated service that seems applicable to only one company. We're told city goal number 10.F calls for this project. The staff has worked on it for 9 months. I believe the city's time and cost could be better directed. The entire issue seems like the tail is wagging the dog. Monumental issues face the community for the staff to work on. A shortage of water now and likely worsening in the future, an affordable reclamation facility that should have potable water available at startup, not just reclamation ready for completion at a higher cost later. This $3 million cost for smart meter billing would be far better spent reclaiming to make usable the 1 million gallons of water a day that goes into the ocean.
Thank you, Nancy.
Betty Winholtz. I sent an email to you earlier today, and so I will talk about a few of those points and a few others in light of tonight's discussion. One of which that it's important to notice that your goal was not to adopt smart meters, but to explore the feasibility of smart meters. And I think that's been accomplished, so I think you can feel satisfied. So the need to pursue that is not really there. I think if you read PWEB's motion to you, it doesn't say they want to hear this again. It doesn't say they want more information. They said they wanted you to look for more information if this was someplace you wanted to go. But they were done with it. So I don't see the need to go back to them. The idea of consolidating of various little places where we do this outsourcing and this, consolidation isn't always the most cost-effective. And certainly this project comes across as being more costly, even though it may consolidate some items. And so I would think that you would know that the public would prefer to have the cheaper rate than consolidation. And the idea about jobs, we understand that jobs aren't done by city staff or even necessarily people in Morro Bay, but we understand that they're done in the county. And that's local, as opposed to Phoenix, Arizona. So I think that's an important point that we enjoyed making. And in spite of saying that this was about process tonight, there's been quite a bit of staff comment about content, which is a bit unfair. And so I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And I heartily support Mr. Deschler's comments that what you really need to do is look in a different direction. That's what PWEB asked for, was that what are the other alternatives? Not what's more about this particular option with Fathom, but what other things could be done to accomplish the same goal. And that hasn't been talked about.
Thank you, Betty.
Debbie Heifel, Morro Bay. It surprises me when I look at the hour, I work, that this was scheduled at this time when they had the Public Works Advisory Board meeting. There were a lot of people there. So I question having this at this hour. It was a sacrifice on my part. I got off at work at 7:15 today. When PWEB voted 6-1 because of the outpouring of interest in this issue of smart meters, that was in response, I believe, to the people that showed up. There were quite a few people. I think these smart meters would be installed without public informed consent. More so than in Europe, people in North America remain in the dark about the negative effects of such devices. They have a different attitude and practices in Europe. This statement from the American Cancer Society, quote, "Smart meters emit radio frequency waves, which are a type of electromagnetic radiation, so there is the potential for them to cause harm. This is an assault on the body. We already have them from PG&E. It's like giant cell phones. It's analogous to that. And like nuclear radiation, you don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't smell it, but it's there. I have had personal experience with effects from this. There have been no studies funded by utilities or cities to actually provide hard data about the effects of these meters on human physiology. But there has been research on the deleterious effects on human health by increased exposure to electromagnetic fields. And again, Europe, if you look into how they behave, it's a little bit different than what we're doing. Furthermore, there's a cost to these meters. And as people have pointed out, there's not a dire need to have them. So the bottom line for me is that those of us who are looking more closely at the dangers and the costs, the city will end up paying for an unnecessary device that the American Cancer Society has gone on record of stating a cautionary tale, or statement rather. And also, they're not that smart. According to bbc.com, you can look it up, smart meters widely used can be hacked to underreport energy use, security researchers have found, unquote. So if you think that it's a big problem that some water leaks past the meters, the mechanical ones that need to be replaced, this could be a bigger can of worms. And there aren't that many cities that are doing it to have any more research on that. So I ask for your prudence. We're talking about a health issue here, and it shouldn't be decided lightly.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Discussion? Christine, you want to lead us off?
Yes, I too thought that this was going to be scheduled earlier, and if you look at the agenda, it was scheduled for D1 under new business, but due to the item D3, we shifted it around, and unfortunately it is going late, but I honestly don't want it to go another 2 weeks, so I know it's late, but I think we need to resolve it tonight because we're talking about process, we're not talking about content. And for me, the item reads on the goal sheet, water metering and billing, research and bring to council for decision a contracted arrangement for automated water meter reading and complete billing operation. So this has to come back to council because that's the process we got started. So for me to say now, one way or another, no, yes, I haven't had this staff report presented to me. It's been presented to PWAB, which is what we asked for, but it has to come back to the council. The council has to hear it because I would be remiss to say I know all the ins and outs based on what's happened in a situation where I wasn't sitting at the dais. So I am suggesting, sorry, I need to go back to the staff report. I am suggesting that given the process we're following as it went to PWAB, now it needs to come back to council. That's what the goal says. I would just like to see it come right to council as soon as it can. I'm not in a huge hurry for it. I don't want it to go back to PWAB. And I want to commend and thank the PWAB members. I emailed them Monday in the afternoon and asked them if they could just, as they had the time to just sort of weigh in on whether they wanted it to come back to them or not. I hadn't seen that anywhere. And fortunately, we are lucky to have great PWAB members because they all were able to respond to me individually before 3:15 today when I had to go to closed session. So I got some great feedback from them that I can share with staff as they move forward and bring it to council. So I would go with alternative, bring the current Fathom proposal to the council now for consideration and decision. But the timing of that, again, I'm not in a huge hurry for it. We have things that we didn't get accomplished tonight, so we can talk about where it might fit into the agenda, but that's where I stand. So I think we need to complete it, and sending it to PWAB I don't think is going to do any more for it, and I also think that council needs to bring it back, consider all of the public. We did a great public outreach. We have 2 meetings, and we have a lot of feedback on what the public thinks, and certainly on the feedback from the Public Works Advisory Board. We know what they're saying, so I think we need to bring it back and to close the loop. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. John?
Ditto.
Noah?
Yeah, I agree completely, and I do think there are some clarifications that I'd like to see in the staff report. I'm not sure if the rest of the council would support this, but there appears to me to be a need, and we haven't seen the latest financial update, but a need for more of an apples-to-apples comparison that scales the approach to updating our water meters, whether it's sticking with the current system with the analog all the way up to contracting out and hybrids of how that could be accomplished. I think we should see some more information. I don't want to send staff out on a massive information gathering campaign that tries to cover all the bases, but at least a better presentation, and then also relate that to the effect of each of those different scenarios potentially are estimated on rates. That's the bottom line, along with the local control issue that I'm hearing. So I think that would help us consider the next steps and make our decision.
Thanks, Noah. Just want to ask you a question. As far as you were talking about, I've got on my notes here basically the explanation of, and you're talking about apples for apples. In other words, my understanding is whether or not it's 1 or 2 meters that need to be repaired or replaced, what's the big picture of meter replacement in this city or any city for that matter? So basically, are we looking at, if we're doing our infrastructure program correctly, are you proposing, if we're comparing Fathom to just an analog mechanical meter, that we really are in need of kind of a program that replaces our mechanical meters on an annual basis or every 5 years, and we're doing, a percentage of that. So over a 10-year period, are we replacing all of them, or a 20-year period, are we replacing all of them? Do you know what I'm getting at?
So what I heard is that, and this is what we were planning to do with whoever we brought it to next, is not to lay out only the Fathom proposal, but other options to address water metering and billing. And I did not say in that necessarily automated water metering, but how to improve our water metering. And so we will certainly do that. And the quick answer to your question, Mayor Irons, is while we do have some money each year budgeted for meter replacement, we do, like many cities, we don't normally replace a meter until it fails completely. And so thus many of our meters that are well over 15, 20 years old are running on 6 cylinders instead of 8, but we don't replace them until they stop running at all. And so we should have we should consider a more proactive program replacing old meters that are likely underperforming. And we will lay that out for you when we bring this to you.
Okay. And then I have one other comment. At a recent mayor's meeting, Mayor Martin from Paso Robles was asking other cities what they were doing for smart meters in regard to water meters, not smart meters versus electric. They weren't in the full exploration phase, but they were interested in it and were asking if there were other cities doing it, which of course I responded. There were some comments about the other option, because I understand Fathom is kind of the full service option. There was some option that you could replace smart meters, and then PG&E's frequency and billing could handle the same operation as what they do for electric meters. So I don't know what that really entails, but there's another city out there that's exploring this, and it's a little bit different than just Fathom. So could we explore or at least communicate with Paso Robles, even to the point where I think they were, at least the comment was, is this worthwhile looking at combining interests as far as municipalities and doing this on a larger scale?
I've spoken with their public works director, Dick McKinley, and he informed me that the salesperson that talked to their mayor was selling an application, is what he's doing. You need the smart meters in the ground to actually use this application, but there are other options, and we can address those in the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
That said, I communicated with Meg Williamson last week and with Jim Thorpe there in Paso, and they are indeed quite interested, but they're not prepared. They just haven't considered it as deeply as we have.
Okay. John?
Yeah, and so I guess maybe what I interpreted apples to apples to be would be a comparison of the total sunk costs of purchasing new meters, smart meters, versus a replacement program over a number of years and what that will cost, leakage costs, and then finally a total cost analysis based upon all of that. Yeah, and then also the scientific issue, I think, needs to be addressed. So I know we're not talking about all that, but there's been questions. So.
Great comments. So it seems like basically with those comments, it would be coming back to council with the comments and requests that have been discussed. Okay. And basically we could just make a motion that reflects that. So that would be, Christine, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I move that council requests that staff bring the current Fathom proposal to the council now for consideration and decision, taking into account additional requests made by council this evening.
Second. So we have a motion by Christine, a second by Jamie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Does everybody want to just go through this code enforcement issue? Do we have good? What do you guys think? Any consensus? You ready to go? Scott's still here. Yeah. Comments? Dave? Scott?
I'm here. Scott's here, you're here, and the main point of this is we intend to engage in 3 full months of robust community outreach, rolling out the program. So the fact that it is late, what you're really going to be telling us to do is go start doing a whole bunch of community outreach before you do any enforcement. I should say any sort of proactive enforcement. We are already doing, as we have been, reactive enforcement, such as the grilly item that was identified during public comment. Scott?
Okay. Ready to go?
Okay, so we have the update for the Community Enhancement or Code Enforcement Program, kind of where we're at, where we're going type thing. From a historical standpoint, back in February of this year, the council adopted city goals. Objective D of Goal 4 was the development of a proactive code enforcement program. Following on the heels of that, the council adopted the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget, allocating $100,000 for the hire of code enforcement personnel and the development of a code enforcement program. Since that time, we've developed a code enforcement job description and started a recruitment. The recruitment started on August 17th of this year and closed last Friday, or September 18th. We received approximately 40 applications, which is good news. Had some good folks to choose from and have a list of folks I'll be calling back starting tomorrow afternoon to hopefully schedule interviews on the week of September 28th or October 5th, depending on availability. So that would place us having active code enforcement officers walking the streets, as it were, probably by the 4th week of October. Oh, sorry, I guess I should catch that up. Program objectives is to bring to the attention of property owners and business owners existing code enforcement violations, which could have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood, and then to obtain voluntary compliance and cooperation, and to instill an atmosphere of personal responsibility for the overall well-being of the community. So it's kind of the overall implementation of the program. The rollout, again, hire code enforcement personnel, and we're in the process of doing that. We've launched the initial website for it, so it's in its sort of infant stages. It'll be more robust as we move down this road. We're incorporating the community enhancement program description in an upcoming water bill mailer. We're implementing a change, getting rid of Let Us Know and replacing that with QSend, which has an actual mobile application that goes along with it. One of those things where you could take a picture of a violation and it comes into the city and then allows us to track that. I think Sam's going to be giving you maybe information on that coming up here in a few weeks. Then we're also implementing CityWorks. That's going to be that's coming up here pretty soon, and that's going to be for project tracking asset management. So it'll track code enforcement complaints as well. These two things will be connected together, so you can track code enforcement or when folks log complaints with us through either system. Looks like we will have implementation coming up here pretty quick for QSend. That'll be rolled out probably in November. And then CityWorks is a little bit further out, 6 to 9 months. We start the kickoff of the implementation in a couple of weeks in October. Moving forward beyond that, we're in the process of creating community enhancement flyers. The flyers cover the following 10 items. Water use, parking, fence height requirements. Those are things we often get complaints about. Garbage can storage, you're not supposed to have them stored in visible locations. RV parking, signs, improvements in the right-of-way, unsightly conditions, junk trash on properties. Shrubbery, hedge height type complaints, similar to the Grilly complaint referenced earlier. And illegal camping. We do have a couple of examples. One for RV and boats. This is meant to be this is meant to be like a door hanger. So, and would include it includes a reference to the Morro Bay Municipal Code section that regulates these types of things, and then tells you where you can locate them. They can be located in rear setbacks and in interior side setbacks, but not in front setbacks or street side yard setbacks. And then at the bottom there, you see a depiction or diagram, and that shows you where your setbacks are, so it tells you where you can have them, where you can't. And then looking up at the top right-hand corner, that's an example of a trailer in a front setback. You can't have them in a front setback. And then also includes information related to the fact that it can't be hooked up to utilities and things like that. Secondary example is for refuse or recycling containers. You're not supposed to store them in the front yard, as shown in the picture down at the bottom. So that says don't do that. You look up at the top there, you're supposed to have them screen when you store them, so you should do that in the top right-hand corner. Don't do that in the bottom left corner. Code enforcement protocols, how we're going to roll this out. In the beginning phases, this is going to be the first 3-month period, commencing at the end of October when we actually have code enforcement folks on, on board. And that'll run through, again, about 3 months through January of 2016. The code enforcement officers, kind of keeping in mind those 10 primary flyers that we're creating, will conduct some neighborhood windshield surveys to see what issues we have out there in the world, and then those will be some of the areas that we target with some of the flyers, let people know what the requirements are. Moving on to the more proactive portion of this, once we've completed that phase, and moving on to when we once people are aware of the things that we're looking to enforce, we'll move on to the more proactive portion of this, I suppose, which is when you identify a code violation. If possible, the idea would be to rectify that violation through immediate voluntary compliance. And then if immediate resolution is not possible, we'd send out a warning notice to them, citing the violation, providing 10 working days to rectify the violation. If that violation was not resolved within the 10 working days, we would send out a second notice. That would be for 5 working days. And then would identify the administrative citation section, so the fines that can be issued if you don't bring it into compliance. And then if it weren't rectified within that 5 working day period, we would issue the citation. Again, this would be after the first 3 months of the outreach that we have that we're working on right now. If the violation were to continue, we could issue additional citations. You can issue citations for each and every day the violation persists, or the issue can be turned over to the Office of the City Attorney to pursue it on the criminal side of things. That's the end. That was quick, as I could make it anyway. It's an informational item, so if there are comments, questions, concerns, let me know.
Questions?
Just as a reminder, these are our existing rules and regulations. This is what we have on our books right now. So if people start to say, "Oh, that I don't like that,"
Purpose of the 3
we haven't
month
changed anything prior to this, right? This is just
Right.
daylighting what we have not been enforcing, but is in our existing regulation.
Very good question and very good point. We don't do active code enforcement right now. What happens is people log complaints, and then we go look into them, and then we send them letters. Very similar to the sort of proactive portion I talked about. It just that'll be something that comes up more regularly when we identify them after we've done the outreach. But it is existing code, existing municipal code, zoning code, what have you.
So one important aspect of the 3-month period is it gives the community time to say, hey, we don't like this part of the code, and to communicate with the staff and with their elected officials and to potentially change the code. If we have a community discussion that says we want RVs parked in the front yard, then that is in your or we don't we want trash cans to stay on the sidewalk continually, then you can change our code, and that's so one positive note about the 3-month period is it gives us an opportunity to have those discussions.
And last question: do you have a plan for going neighborhood by neighborhood, or what? How, should people be aware? Coming to you soon, or how?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The windshield surveys, basically, we'll send the code enforcement officers out into the neighborhoods to take a look at some of what's going on there. We'll identify some of those neighborhoods which maybe have more issues going on and start in those neighborhoods for, say, RV parking compliance or hedge height issues, those types of things. So that's kind of what we're talking about. There are areas where we have issues that we are aware of, and so those are the types of things we'd be looking at to start with. But it would be rolling it out citywide. I mean, the idea would be, eventually that we have city staff trained to note these things as they go out, because we're going to have a new, let us know, if you will, thing that city staff can use. They can log those, violations that they identify while they're out there. I mean, we all walk around out, all city staff. There's lots of us walking around every day doing our jobs. So those types of things can be identified, and over time, you'll clean them up and have fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer of them. That's the idea. And then the city, hopefully, will be looking better, and neighbors will be looking better. So,
Thanks, Christine. John?
I thought it was well done. I like the prioritization list. Appreciate those 10 things. I think the grace period is great, giving them a 3-month grace period. How will you prioritize in the future the patrols after the top 10? Just kind of we walk around and tell you, or
well, it'll be as things come up. I mean, there'll be issues that are out there that we have 10 flyers. We have a lot of municipal code requirements that are out there. So as we resolve things that are on the list of 10 right now, I'm sure others will crop up. There are other things out there that we get calls on, that we go do code enforcement on now, that we get complaints about. So it will expand. It probably won't just be those 10 things on the flyer. We'll have other things out there that are fairly common around town that we'll create new flyers for.
Gotcha. And under your 10 working days to rectify the violation, first notice, and then second notice, et cetera, what if it's a major correction? Is there a plan to allow for some kind of variance if it's going to be... That's it?
Yeah, I think what we're looking to do here is we're looking to gain compliance. So part of it is getting the folks that you're sending the letter to engage. There might be something that you can't rectify within 10 days. And there might be a very good reason why. Maybe they're out of the country. I don't know. Those types of things will come up. They come up now. We send out letters. They get them. They're like, I'm not there right now. I can't get to this for 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay. Give me a time frame when you're going to have it done. And then as long as it's not 6 months from now, then we're usually pretty, willing to work with folks.
I thought they might get a Joe letter, so I just was curious.
We want to use Joe as little as possible.
Looks good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Noah?
Thank you. The one item in here that I think is the most interesting to me is the water use. And the the way I understood the code enforcement duties was going to include a skill set that understands water conservation and public education and outreach, potentially even audits to assist residents that are interested in participating to improve their water use and reduce waste. So is that still a component? Are you going to be looking for that as you interview?
Aren't you kind of already doing that?
We do that with our existing staff. So the public education component of it, I think we'll be looking for the code enforcement staff to assist us finding those and starting the communication process. And then we do have budget allocated for some low-cost water auditors, if we can find those. Haven't had much success so far, but if we do need additional staff on water auditing, we do have a little bit of budget that was approved this last year.
Okay. And I think it'd be important for us to schedule schedule a review of the effectiveness of the program and clear place to check in on what seem to be the number one concerns being expressed from the community as this new program gets rolled out, which will be a shock to many because we've gone so long without a program. So let's just be proactive and build that into the schedule in the short term, and then also, again, within that first year of the program being written.
Great comment, Noah. I was looking as well for, as far as notification and some outreach, just using PWAB or Planning Commission to daylight some of this as well, just to reinforce this particular meeting and information. Is there some way you can convey that?
Well, I mean, we can certainly have ongoing informational items that are presented at Police Planning Commission. I mean, I suppose we could do it at PWAB as well. I mean, there's no reason that can't be. I mean, we're going to continue to do outreach in the form of Facebook posts and things like that.
Yeah.
That'll be an ongoing thing probably. I think we've talked about in the past having a code enforcement issue of the month type thing. I would imagine probably we will do that. That makes a lot of sense, especially once the program's active and we have personnel on the ground that are doing it. It makes sense to sort of remind folks that we are doing it, and to continue to do so because they're going to see these folks walking around, driving around out in the city. So just to sort of keep folks attuned to the.
I think it's a great idea, and we can have staff do a quick update on, like we just gave
report,
to you at
yeah.
each of the different advisory boards over the next month. The article in the Bay News, assuming you approve this, next Bay News will be on this, and so we'll use Water Bill Miller is going to be on this. Yep, this Water Bill Miller that's in the mail right now, I think, is on this subject or is about to be. So we're going to use all the different communication forms to let the community know, and I think that's a great idea is to inform all the various boards and commissions as well.
Okay, great. I'll open it for public comment at this time. Anybody like to come forward?
Betty Winholtz. We got rid of the code enforcer when I was on city council. It was one of the, I think, poor decisions that we made in light of having to cut staff at that time, and I think the city has suffered for that. So I'm very glad that we're having code enforcement again. And I would hope that there would be a serious kind of training that would go on with those people as they are trained to approach the public, that they aren't just, thrown out there and create hard feelings. I do object to the wordsmithing that's gone on. One of the things that we do in high school and in math is we try not to fool people and try to make a difficult subject like math as clear as possible. But changing vocabulary from code enforcement to community enhancement doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell the person down the street that we're after you for watering your lawn, And the topics that you're speaking to are mostly cosmetic, and I would think that there would be more serious topics that you would want to go after, things that actually damage or hurt the community, rather than just, where does your trash can belong? That's fairly minor, in my opinion, in terms of what we need for code enforcement. And so I would suggest you keep the term code enforcement so people know what you're talking about. I think that's pretty much most of what I want to say about code enforcement. And I just have to add one more time, shame on you all for reading past 11 o'clock.
Thanks, Betty. Okay. So any comment to the code enforcement, community enhancement, any conversation from council on that? No? I guess the other question I have, as far as it grows into something more, it seems, it's great that, you have on page 3, number 3, it says 10 working days to rectify the violation. And when we had the conversation of, maybe if it's 12, so it tells me we're thoughtful and understanding that it's not a hard number. We know how to work with people. So in that regard, with training, any other comments on the training portion of our...
Well, that's really the idea. I mean, we're not looking to go out there and punish and fine people. I don't think that's what the city's about. I think really what we just want is compliance. Comply with the codes that the city has. We make you aware of them, and we want you within a reasonable amount of time to comply or rectify whatever the violation might be. So we should be reasonable about that, I think. I don't know that there's a hard and fast, this is it, this is the line, you get 5 days, you get 10 days, that's it. I don't know that I've heard that from any of you. Right. And so we've not taken that position. And so a little bit of this is we already do code enforcement. We just do it on a complaint basis, and this is kind of how we deal with people now. This is not new. It's just the proactive piece of this is the new piece. People are like, the city's coming and knocking on my door now and telling me that I have issues. That wasn't happening before. That was really going to be your neighbor or someone driving down the street complaining about something that you're doing. And that's how we got engaged. This will just be a little bit different.
One discussion we had before I asked Sam to make a brief comment about community enhancement versus code enforcement is, for example, the spirit of the RV law or RV piece of code is not to have RVs parked in your front yard for 7 months on end. But if somebody has their RV, doesn't have a place to park their RV at their house, and we hear that they were going on a camping trip and they brought their RV in Thursday night and plugged in the electricity to get the refrigerator cooled down and the water and those sort of things, and then Friday morning they drove out and it was there for 12 hours. The spirit of the law is they're trying to do the right thing. They've got a rental place to store the RV, and so Scott and our code enforcement team are going to wisely enforce the law in order to enhance our community.
In the spirit of what Betty said, it's going to be done with grace.
Absolutely.
Well said. That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
So just to speak briefly on the community enhancement aspect, that was actually something that we transparently, directly, and bluntly talked about. Part of it being because this came out of a process where we were, it was reported that we weren't doing the work we were supposed to be doing. And that came at citizen concern. So we know our citizens are concerned about these issues, that we have this code, it should be enforced. That's not to say that we don't also use the term code enforcement. In fact, the short URL you use to get on the website, and that's morrow-bay.ca.us/code enforcement is /code enforcement. So we actually are purposely using them interchangeably for a purposeful reason. We want to be clear that this is code enforcement, but we also want to be clear that we're trying to be positive about this because we recognize that our community wants us to do this, and that in the end, this should be a positive for the community. We're simply working to enforce the laws as they are, but it should allow for some cleanup. It should allow for some enhancement. That doesn't mean we've thrown out the word code enforcement, not by any stretch of the imagination. We thoughtfully use the URL /code enforcement for a reason as well.
And they're going to remain code enforcement officers because that's what the municipal code says they are. They're not community enhancement officers. That terminology does not exist in the code, so they will always be referred to as code enforcement officers.
Great.
Until the code gets changed.
All right. Thanks for rolling that out.
Well, since I haven't spoken, I'm going to say something that you might not want to hear, but there will be times where 10 days is way too long, too.
Yeah.
Where it's a health and safety issue, and we'll want immediate compliance with that. So,
and that's thank you for
just want to make sure
that
everybody
because
knows
I think there was the
too.
question on, hey, if there's some other health and it's not just what's on this list. There's other health and safety items. So thank you. Thanks for rolling that out. Any other questions? Seeing none, would we consider moving on to council declaration future agenda items? Anybody?
Yeah, so we'll just move C2. So we're only really relocating one item, so that's not too bad.
Right.
Okay,
C2 will continue and move on to declaration of future agenda items. Seeing none, we'll get into adjournment. We're ready to go. Okay, we'll call the meeting adjourned, and the next regular meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 13, 2015 at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, folks.